many people these days are complaining that they can't focus. They're struggling with their memory. They just can't pay attention in a way that they used to. So in your view, what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, the world has changed, certainly. Technology, and I'm pretty pro-technology. It also, it maybe hasn't caused it, but it certainly has amplified some of that distraction, that digital distraction. I mean, we live in an age of rings and pings and dings and app notifications, social media alerts, and so I feel like in a way that we're driven to be distracted. And how do you maintain your concentration, which is so important nowadays? You know, we live in the attention economy, and you know, but we're rewiring our brains to react and to be able to focus every little thing that's in our purview. And so, and how are you going to get things done? How are you going to learn? How are you going to study? How are you going to be productive? You know, in my book Limitless, I talk about four digital. It's like the four horsemen, if you will, of the mental apocalypse. And I tend to alliterate, so I made them all D's. The first one actually is digital distraction. You know, is you know, with the rise of technology and every like and share and comment and cat video, and then we get those dopamine hits. We're kind of rewired to be distracted. Another one that we're facing that people I think are struggling with right now is this thing called digital deluge. It's feel like there's too much information, but not enough time to go through it all. It feels, some people describe it as taking a sip of water out of a fire hose, maybe, or they're drowning in information. And how do you catch up and keep up and get ahead? And some of the things we could talk about here is I talk about accelerated learning, which I think is one of the most important skills to be able to master in the 21st century, to be able to catch up and really thrive. Accelerated learning could also be speed reading. You know, where you could, you know, you have so much to read, you know, this, you know, in your field, and the half-life of information is getting shorter and shorter, but the amount of information is coming at dizzying speed. But how we read it or learn it, that growing gap creates information anxiety, higher blood pressure, compression of leisure time, more sleeplessness. So it could be a big challenge for people. And then there's one that I term digital deduction.
Digital deduction.
Yeah.
That's the third one, right?
Yeah. Digital deduction. So you have digital distraction and digital deluge. Digital deduction is this phenomenon where it seems like this generation is not having the same ability to think or to rationalize. You applied logic, critical thinking, and you know, it could be because of technology. You know, with algorithms, a lot of technology is doing the thinking for us. Right, it's telling us, you know, giving us our recommendation. It's telling us how to get from here to there. If you think about, you know, way back before GPS, you know, we would have to build visual spatial intelligence in order for people to get from here to there. But now we rely on our devices, so we don't have to think. So we're outsourcing that. And then a big one is digital dementia. I mean, think about that. We're so reliant on technology to also be like our external memory drive. I mean, think about how many phone numbers, you know, your audience, you and I used to know growing up. I mean, a lot, right?
A lot, yeah.
Yeah, and how many do we know today? Current numbers, you know, probably could count on one hand, maybe 1, 2, or 3. Not that I want to memorize 500 phone numbers, but it should be concerning that a lot of people complain about not being able to memorize one, you know, a phone number or a PIN number or a passcode or a seed phrase or what they ate that day or a conversation they just had. I believe two of the most costly words sometimes in our life, certainly in our work, are I forgot. I forgot to do it. I forgot to bring it. I forgot that meeting. I forgot that conversation. I forgot what I was going to say. I forgot that person's name. You know, every single time we have those lapses, we could lose time and credibility. We could hurt a relationship.
Those are two powerful words, aren't they? I forgot. It's interesting because it's clearly something that is increasing in society. People in their 30s now are saying, you know, I just can't remember that. I can't remember where I put my keys, right? So,
or something larger like their car.
Or something larger like their car.
You see the people walking around the lot with their car alarms like GPS trying to figure out where to park their car.
So I want to sort of explore what's going on here. You've mentioned these 4 Ds, right?
Yeah.
And of course, they all start with digital.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned that you're pro-technology, right? So it's not necessarily technology that's doing it. Maybe it's the way we're using that technology sometimes that's problematic. So let's go through those one by one. I know you've outlined them,
Yeah.
but digital distraction, I think we all kind of get that we can't focus because we're just drawn to our smartphone, and we're just, before we know it, we should be doing a work project, but somehow we've ended up down a Twitter rabbit hole, or we've been on Instagram for 10 minutes without even realizing it.
Yeah.
So what can we do about that?
Yeah. I mean, for me, technology is not necessarily good or bad. It's exactly what you said. It's how it's applied. Like fire is a form of technology, and fire could cook our food or it could burn down our home, right? But you're right. It's how we're using it, and as opposed to it using us, right? Technology is a tool for us to use, but if technology is using us, then who becomes the tool? Then we become the tool, right? And so, having agency, I think, is very important. A way of starting this conversation in terms of that we're not a victim, that we always are the pilot. We're the pilot of our lives instead of the passenger. We're the pilot of our minds. We're not the passenger. We don't have to just be reacting to it. My challenge is when people pick up the phone out of boredom, right? I mean, in terms of how many times do people open up social media or touching their phone, or if it's at the table during a meal, it creates that kind of unconscious anxiety that's there. It's just the impulse to be able to pick it up. And so part of it is obviously controlling the environmental aspect of it, and knowing that we always have a choice, right? There's a quote in Limitless from a French philosopher, and he says, life is the letter C between the letters B and D. Life is C between B and D. B is birth, D is death, life C, choice. We always have that choice every single day. Our lives, in effect, is the sum total of all the choices we made up to this point. Where are we going to live? Who are we going to spend time with? What are we going to eat? What are we going to do for a living? What are we going to feed our mind? And I'm also thinking that when it comes to choices, in the decisions that we make, I believe that even at a meta level, that these difficult times, they could distract us. We're talking about distraction. They could diminish us, or these difficult times can actually develop us. We always decide, because we always have choice. Every day we wake up with a chance because we have choice, right? And to take responsibility of it, as opposed to putting it out there like something. I always use this metaphor that it's important for all of us to identify more with a thermostat than we do a thermometer. Meaning a thermometer, let's say a thermometer is in your room. What's its function? It just reacts to the environment. Whatever the environment gives it, it reacts. And as human beings, we are sometimes like that. We react to how people treat us. We can react to the weather. We can react to the economy, all these different things. But ultimately, this. As you write about happiness, the people that are most fulfilled, happy, successful, they tend to not react as much, right? They tend to maintain more of their agency. A thermostat has that agency. A thermostat doesn't react to its environment. A thermostat, it knows the temperature, it gauges. It has awareness, and though it sets a temperature, and what happens to the environment reacts to it.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I love that. And, when I've watch your videos online or listen to your podcast, I see a lot of shared philosophy. I see a lot of things between us that we both like to talk about. And I know first thing in the morning is a very important time for you, as it is for me.
Yeah.
I really do passionately believe that the way we start the day determines so much of what happens later on in that day. If you start off consuming news, don't be surprised that you feel anxious, a bit frazzled, a bit negative about the world later on, because the way we feel is often downstream from what we're consuming.
Yeah.
And I know you're big on morning routines. You're big on not looking at your phone for a period of time in the morning. And if we use the analogy of the thermostat, I guess we get a chance every morning to set the thermostat on our life, depending on what we do, right? So you're a brain coach, you're a world-renowned brain coach. So to you, what does an ideal morning look like if we're thinking about the health of our brains?
And specifically towards things like focus, to have better focus throughout the day. Yeah, I'm very intentional. And when I go through some of the things I talk about in my morning routine, I'm not suggesting it's for everybody. I don't think necessarily everything is for everybody or everybody's for everything. I do ask people to maybe experiment. I think ultimately we are our best coach, and it's nice to have mentors and others and get their feedback, but to test it on themselves. And then everyone's situation is a little bit different, right? Some people work at night, they're night workers, they have lots of kids and such. For me, when I wake up, my goal is, while I do some of the biohacking people see on social media, the cryotherapy and the saunas and all that, most of that I like to get nowadays from nature because it's free. I feel like it's very natural. It's very duplicatable, for all of us.
Is that when you spoke about recently? You like to get the 4 elements first thing in the morning.
I do.
That was beautiful. Could you elaborate on that?
When I was researching another book, I was reading about the elements and how, ancient cultures like from Babylon and Babylonian times, they used to believe, in ancient Greeks, they used to believe everything was made up of these 4 elements: air, fire, water, and earth. And I thought, wow, that's very beautiful. It sounds very natural and organic for me. And so for me, I like to infuse my day with those elements. Maybe first thing in the morning, and you could do it by going out and getting grounded. I love taking off my shoes and, being barefoot.
You're barefoot now in the studio, as I am?
Exactly, yeah. And walking around your beautiful yard, and it's very peaceful. You get grounded. And, some people use biohacking like PMF mats, at certain frequencies. But, I feel like all of those are meant to kind of imitate nature, like the infrared, the red lights imitate the sun and so on. So I'm going out there, I'm getting the direct sunlight, which is very important. We know many people talk about getting direct sunlight first thing in the morning to reset your circadian rhythm, to help you sleep better at night. So that's the fire for me. And I have the earth. I hydrate because we could lose a good amount of water when we sleep, through respiration and perspiration. And just staying hydrated could boost your reaction time, your thinking speed, upwards of 30%. I mean, it's a huge, not a small boost, but a huge lift.
So how much do you drink each morning?
Yeah, for me, it's a little different. I always go by like how I feel. And, also that's dictated by the night before, just like getting a good night's sleep is dictated by how you start the day also as well. I do some electrolytes. That really works well for me, the salts and the minerals. A nice tall glass works for me. Usually room temperature. It just kind of like, that's my personal thing. And then the last one is air, and that's just doing some breathing exercises. Sometimes people feel sedated, or when they're reading, they fall asleep, or they feel like they have that mental fatigue. And I feel like a lot of times it's just because we're not getting enough air. Sometimes we have to just even check our posture when we're at our desk, because sometimes when you collapse your diaphragm, the lower 1/3 of your lungs could absorb 2/3 of the oxygen. So, it's really important to get that blood flow and that oxygen to where it really matters. So those are the kind of things I do. But intentionally, what I'm thinking about in the morning is I do this, and I've done this for the longest time. I do these thought experiments, where I'm going to imagine myself at the end of the day. I could do this in bed, or I could do this outside. I can imagine a family member asking at the end of the day, "How was your day?" And I was like, "Today was really great. I'm very blessed. I crushed it today," something like that. And then I ask myself, if that's what I say, then what had to happen in order for me to feel that way? And I work backwards. I kind of reverse engineer it, meaning like I think about 3 things personally and 3 things maybe professionally that happened. And they don't have to be huge, big things, but that's where I kind of put my focus and my intention. I kind of work backwards. I was like, okay, if I do this, if I have this conversation with you, that's a big check mark for me, and that'll make me happy. If I walk the dogs, or play with my son, or I do these, do specific activities, that's a win. So I work backwards from that.
If you enjoyed that clip, here's another powerful clip that I think you are really going to enjoy.